Welcome to College Football Roundtable, your source for college football coverage, including major storylines,
playoffs,
can't miss game previews, and picks each week. Join your hosts, Dan, Rob, and Jordan at the Roundtable for a show unlike anything else. As for Football presents the College Football Roundtable.
What's up, everyone? The College Football Committee eats a little bit of crow by putting a group of 5 team in the playoff. Bama and Georgia switch places in the rankings. Michigan actually looks like they're peaking. It's not Christmas until Hans Gruber falls off of Nakatomi Plaza, and the bowl games are on the TV. What's up, Trash Talkers? Welcome back to the College Football Roundtable, or if you prefer, we'd like to call it Ring Knocker Radio. I'm your host, Rob, in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Joining me today is James in Oklahoma and Dano Ikebesa calling out of coastal Connecticut. Jordan is, he would be on the show, but he is actually battling something real world, and we will leave it at that. And hopefully he jumps on a little bit later after the, when we get to the other show or later in the show. All right, so Service Academy action this week. Here we go. Everybody knows it's coming up. If you do not know that Army-Navy football is this weekend, you are either living under a rock or you are not in the service. But East Rutherford, New Jersey, kickoff is at 3 p.m. The Commander-in-Chief's trophy stays at Army, but the cadets have a chance to win the trophy outright on Saturday. Army's 8-3, looked great against a tough Liberty team going into their bye week. Navy is 3-8, and they are the best of the worst teams in the American Conference. And by saying that, they're 8th overall in the American Conference, but they have 3 1-7 teams behind them, so they're better than the worst ones. Army needs a win to make an argument to break out and go into a different bowl game. It looks like they are going to the Armed Forces Bowl. It's a solid bowl. They're playing an SEC team, but Army has gone to the Armed Forces Bowl 3 times and twice in its last 5 bowl appearances. So for a change of scenery for the guys that went to the last one, I would prefer that. But hey, what can you do? James, let's move on to the top 10 poll stands.
All right, so Rob is breaking up a little bit, but I will go through the AP top 10.
Fine.
We got 82 ranked teams that have lost this season now, and we finally have our top 4. The teams ranked 1, 9, 15, 17, 20, and 21 all lost this week. After championship weekend, the AP poll becomes a preseason projection for next year, and the playoff rankings are really the ones that matter in terms of the college football playoff. So the Big 12 championship, we had Baylor beating Oklahoma State in an upset. MAC championship, Northern Illinois beat Kent State. In the Mountain West, Utah State beat San Diego State in a somewhat surprising result, more so because the score was 46-13. Sun Belt, Louisiana beat App State, still only 1 loss on the season, first game of the year against Texas. The American Cincinnati beats Houston en route to the first group of 5 playoff bid. In the ACC, Pitt beats Wake Forest, 45-21. In the Pac-12, Utah beats Oregon 38-10. Conference USA, San Antonio takes on Western Kentucky and beats them 49-41 in a shootout. Questionable call in that game, a questionable coaching call in that game, going for it on 4th down in the 3rd quarter. Big Ten championship, Big Blue, Michigan taking on Iowa and beating them 42-3 in Indianapolis. Wolverine offense looked good against a team that hadn't let up more than 27 points this year. And then Bama over Georgia in the SEC championship, 41-24. That being said, your college football playoff rankings, top 6, are Bama, Michigan, Georgia, Cincinnati, there's the playoff, and then just outside looking in, Notre Dame at 11-1 and Ohio State at 10-2. Nick Saban has captured some video now. I'm sorry. I'll let Rob take this one.
Yeah, so deep down inside, I'm throwing the BS flag on Bama moving up to number 1. I mean, if you look at the performance Like, let's be real, Michigan should be the number 1 seed. But I believe that Nick Saban probably has some captured video from a TGI Fridays in Jacksonville that he has been circling around the college football committee. Thus, they pushed him into the top spot again. I did not think, and again, there's some YouTube pundits that were like, hey, Georgia's going to lose because Nick Saban has the opportunity to prepare, and he's just great at preparation, and he knows Kirby Smart pretty well. Turned out that was probably the case, But moving on to questions for the cute crew, what was your favorite championship game of championship weekend?
Yeah, for sure. Mine was the Western Kentucky game versus UTSA. I said before then, right before the game started, I said, they're going to run all over these guys. And you know what? They ran all over those guys. Game really wasn't as close as the score probably made it look like because, Western Kentucky, they played a good second half, but they got so far down and they just couldn't come back. I feel for Bailey Zappi, but I feel like a lot of pro scouts hopefully got to see him play, which is a little bit more important for his professional development over the long term. Also worth noting in the Mountain West, San Diego State had something like 20 kids out with COVID. That sucks. What horrible timing.
Yeah, my favorite game very clearly was the Big Ten championship in Indianapolis, watching Michigan, take on the Hawkeyes defense and just throw all over them and really honestly get some good running going, which nobody has done against Iowa this year to any level of success. So getting to watch Hassan Haskins take down the Iowa defensive front was pretty impressive. And it makes, as a Michigan fan, I'm happy to see that headed into a Georgia game because like Iowa, Georgia has a very good front seven. What Rob said about the number 1 seed, I think they got the 4 teams right, but I don't understand how you put an Alabama team at number 1 the week after they won a coin toss against a 6-6 Auburn. Like, we have already had the overtime debate on this show, and we won't have it again. But I mean, as I said on Twitter, I would be just as impressed with Alabama's performance against Auburn if after regulation they flipped a coin and they said, okay, Alabama wins. And we're supposed to pretend like that coin flip makes them a really, really good, playoff potential team. But losing that coin flip would have been, oh no, they're out of the playoff contention. And so, like, I just can't imagine why something 7 days ago like that didn't matter in the mind of the committee.
Yeah, I think the committee, like I said, there's some kind of dossier floating around that Saban has in his office that he is going to use for leverage because it doesn't make any sense, And for me, I watched Baylor and Oklahoma State. I thought that was a great game. I really thought old Pistol Pete would pull it out and in the waning moments. And then of course I watched the Big Ten championship. However, the SEC championship, I will say this, when Bryce Young started running, I was like, crap, this dude's going to win the Heisman and they're going to win this game. Because when you have quarterbacks that are openly saying it this season, they, recruited me to throw the football, not to run. But when you have a guy that's, that caliber of a passer saying, well, if I don't run, my team's not going to win, it kind of puts it in perspective. So he's, putting his foot down and kind of bit down on the mouthpiece and ran it several times in the first half, and it was ugly because he was wide open in space. And so I think that was a huge contributor to Georgia's downfall. Now, speaking of Georgia, second question today is, do you think Georgia deserves a second chance after, losing that badly in the championship game? Not to say that we would want to see, Ohio State move up, but potentially Notre Dame getting into the playoff.
I mean, I definitely understand the argument that Georgia's got a better case than Notre Dame. Like, it's not that I don't agree with that, but I feel like we just saw their best shot and it was not enough. So to then say, well, that's fine. It doesn't matter that you lost the championship game. Let's put you in the national championship anyway for a do-over. Like, it just doesn't sit right with me. Like, it just doesn't sit right with me. How can you be the best team in the country if you're not the best team in the conference? The answer is obviously you cannot. There's no way to talk your way around that. It's just simple logic, simple reality.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't sit right with me. If the committee's job is really to pick the top 4 teams, I think they did get it right. I think the order was all messed up. Um, I honestly think that the right order for those teams, if you're trying to, objectively pick, the correct order, and I'm not doing this order because I want to prevent a rematch in the semifinal. But I
Yeah.
think that I think that the right order is Michigan, Alabama, Cincinnati, Georgia, and
Yeah, I think that's right.
it would be the same exact matchups. The only thing is that Michigan, Georgia would be the Cotton Bowl instead of the Orange Bowl, and Alabama, Cincinnati would be, the Orange Bowl.
But they very clearly didn't put Georgia at number 4 just to avoid the rematch, that's not a thing. If they're the 4th team, then they're the 4th team. And if they get the rematch, then that's how that shakes out.
Right, but I think both number 2 should have been number 1 and number 3 should have been number 4. Like, it would have been the same matchups if they had done it the right way. It just, the games would have been at different locations.
Well, yeah. And again, ultimately the best team is going to win, and I suppose that's all that matters. But it just, if they had dropped Georgia and said, that was your chance and you blew it, like, that'd be a little easier to understand just on its face.
And by the way, so, like, there's talk about the 12-team playoff. There's a bit of a snag, in that respect. But a 12-team playoff right now, let me read off the teams that would be in the playoff. You have Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, Cincinnati, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Baylor, and then you'd have Ole Miss, Oklahoma State, Michigan State, Utah, and Pitt. That's a bunch of great matchups in there.
It is, but none of the outer ring of those teams is better than the inner ring. Like why? We have the best 4 teams. Like, everyone agrees about that. So it's good. Okay, let's let everybody play. Like, fine, but it's not necessary. We really only need a playoff of 3 teams this year. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Alabama, Michigan, and Cincinnati are the teams with the resume that deserve a shot. Yeah. Now, you got to add one more team in there. They pick Georgia. That's fine. But yeah, I think we're headed towards expansion. I don't mind those teams duking it out. At the very least, it's a bunch of really good football games.
Well, that's true.
Yeah, I think the honest answer is, 12 teams might be too much. I think 10 teams is probably the targeted window, even 8. But I think if you just do 10, you say, hey, all the conference champions make it in.
Yeah, the problem with doing all the conference champions is that then you're making it impossible for Notre Dame to get in there, which I don't think Notre Dame is necessarily deserving probably 9 years out of 10, but every once in a while they might be deserving.
Of records, and then it takes the guesswork out of it. Yeah, but again, with all the talk of conference realignment and putting people in different conferences, then it may fix itself. But my concern is it's just like with the BCS. Like, at some point, the computer and the eye test comes in, and let's be honest, the college football committee are a bunch of older gentlemen, so they may be having some cataract surgery pretty recently, and so their eyes may not be as good as they are required to make the decisions that they make. Because if you watch Championship Saturday, and I am by no means a Michigan fan, but Michigan put on the best performance of all the teams that are in the playoff by far, but yet and still they're ranked number 2. There's something wrong with that. And that's where my problem comes in. It's like, look, just be honest with yourself and say, hey, look, if we look at the offensive performance against, these defenses that have been holding people, like I saw a quote, I forget who it was from. I think it was from one of the linebackers at Georgia, was like, hey, if this was the New England Patriots, they wouldn't get in the end zone on us. And like, Alabama scored 42 points, and you guys that barely let people score a touchdown all season. So does that mean Alabama had a better scheme? Yes. If you watched what their players did, their players gave extra effort. Like Bryce Young, who is a drop back passing quarterback, ran his ass off in that game. Whether you like the kid or you don't, whether you like Bama or you don't, their players stepped up and made the plays that they needed to win that game. And so when you're watching it comprehensively, if Bama is 2, it's because of the eye test. You won a crappy overtime game against Auburn in the Iron Bowl. And like, yeah, it's a rivalry. You got to toss the records out, whatever, but they're 6-6, right? You have Michigan, who beat their rival, who is 10-1. At some point that should balance out, like, hey, look, these guys have a much tougher opponent in their rivalry game, so they should be on top. But again, this is just, Rob's Army Monday morning. But at the end of the day, I think for the fans of those teams, it would be more fair if they were actually, doing a legitimate assessment. Anyway, let's move on to the games of the week. Actually, is there really games, or is it just one game? Dan, what are your thoughts?
There's just one game this week, and I'm super excited about it. That is the Army-Navy game. I mean, I don't know. Am I supposed to be excited about something else?
Absolutely not. All right, so we'll have our full game preview on the Army football show, but briefly, Army is favored by 7.5 points or 8, but depending on where you look, the over-under sits at 36, and hey, you know what? I'm not going to jinx it. There's a note in here. I'm not going to say what the note says because,
so actually, the over/under is at 36. It's dipped as low as 34.5 now. So I mean, you're talking about a game where neither team gets to 20 points is essentially what they're projecting, a game where maybe Army scores just over 20 and Navy scores just over 10. I mean, that's an insanely low amount of points in a prediction.
That is an extremely possible prediction, though. I mean, yeah, are we gonna pick against the spread? Because I'll tell you right now that I would take the under. I mean, it's just one of these rivalry games. They know this offense so well. All the pros know that it almost always hits under. Like, don't get me wrong, crazy stuff happens, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, and we will go. We can go right into picks and trap game of the week. I'll review real quick. Season finale after before Army Navy. Rob ends up even on the year. Dan's up 5 units, and Jordan is down 4. So Jordan will pay for beer at Army Navy.
Halftime.
At halftime, yep. So we'll pick. So you're picking the under. Rob, real quick, let's get your pick, and then I'll offer my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I'm gonna pick the under. So I went back and I watched from 2016 through 2020 games on the YouTubes as well.
Oh wow!
And and so when you watch those games, either there's going to be a highly emotional play, an execution error, weather's going to come in. There's going to be some factor that's going to impact the game that's going to keep the score a little bit closer. So I think the under is right. I would say it might be even a push. You might see 36 points, like Army scores 20 and Navy scores 16. That's possible. But I don't think we're going to see this offensive juggernaut. I hope that we do. Like, I would love to see Army hang like 70 on these dudes just for purpose. I am all for a basketball score as long as Army is on, the winning end of it. So if we score if it's like Wake Forest and Army earlier this season and Army scores 70 points, I'll be fine with that because everybody wants to see a shootout in an Army Navy game. Usually it doesn't happen, but when it does, it's like, whoa, that's a sight to see. So it makes the game, a little bit more interesting. I'm hoping for cold weather, so when Coach gets the Gatorade bath, I hope he's waterproof his stuff, on either side because it will be chilly, and that's all I'm going to say on that.
Yeah, so I'm going to disagree with you guys. You're right. Typically, teams get super conservative, and we'll talk about this a lot more on the Army show, so I'll save most of it. But I think you're going to see a more aggressive Army offense in this game. I think that Coach Monken is still a little PO'd about the 2019 game and how Navy didn't really run up the score, but they scored a lot of points. He wasn't happy about that, and I think he wants his turn at having a lopsided victory. I think if there is a year to do it for Army, this is the year. They've shown they can be effective being aggressive. They did it as recently as a couple weeks ago against Liberty. And I think that it's probably the time, if there's going to be one, where they start shooting. But we'll see.
That's fair. That 2019 game was an extreme misery.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of it depends on, you have to have really good skill players on offense in order to execute those plays early so that you can be riskier later and continue to put yourself up. And 2019, since Army started winning, 2019 is the only year where one side had just a ridiculous skill player where you could do that. Army doesn't have one ridiculous skill player that can do it, but they have a lot of players with a good amount of skill where they can do that. It is a possibility.
All right. Now, moving on to the bowl notes really quick. Dan, if you want to cover those.
Yeah. So Air Force is in the First Responder Bowl versus Louisville on December 28th. ESPN has that game starting at 3:15. Army is back in the Armed Forces Bowl, as we said, against Mizzou. That game is on December 22nd, starting at 8 p.m. Briefly, my take, I know Army we were hoping they might get a slightly different bowl game. There was some talk about them potentially going to the Gasparilla Bowl. However, I also know that the coaching staff and the players wanted to play before Christmas just because it's such a grind being at the academy. And they got an SEC opponent, which makes the game super interesting. So I think they did pretty well, regardless of the fact that they're going back to the Armed Forces Bowl. I mean, the alternative was putting Army in the First Responder Bowl and Air Force in the Armed Forces Bowl. And I'll tell you right now, the Black Knights would probably prefer to play on the 22nd instead of the 28th. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, the First Responders Bowl gets, each team will get about $200,000 less than in the Armed Forces Bowl, and Air Force is splitting their money. So, there's an incentive there as well. I'm selfishly happy because I get to go to the game now. But that aside, if this were an exceptional Army year, if they had 10 wins going into Army Navy and they got the Armed Forces Bowl, I'd be a little disappointed. I'd say, you know what, they're a team, they'd probably be ranked, and they're going to the Armed Forces Bowl, and they're probably going to smack around whoever they're playing. That's not the case this year. They're having a good, you could even say a great year. It's not a special year. It's not an exceptional year. The Armed Forces Bowl, in a good matchup, they're favored by, I think, 2.5 points on Missouri. It's a great matchup in a bowl that Army fans are going to show up to. It's going to be an Army home crowd. Like, it's just a good assignment. So what if it's the Armed Forces Bowl again?
Yeah, no, I agree completely. And it works out. A lot of people are going to get to go to the game. It's at the perfect time. And that Gasparilla Bowl, Florida versus UCF, that's a great matchup in Florida. What are you going to do? I mean, I totally understand why they did that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you live in Florida, like, go ahead, buy your Disney tickets, go to a bowl game. Live it up for the holiday. I mean, that'd be a great way to roll into the new year. Do the couple days at Disney, go to the Gasparilla Bowl, watch the Gators lose, and then move on. And then enjoy the rest of their holiday. But to kind of put a pin on this thing so we can wrap this up, there are some pretty interesting bowl games this first week. So bowls will start on the 17th, which is Friday on the 17th of December. You got the Bahamas Bowl, great for Middle Tennessee and Toledo. What an awesome place to be. It's kind of warm down there, I hear. 12 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN. You've got the Cure Bowl, Northern Illinois and Coastal Carolina. That could be a potential game. Like, if Coastal Carolina would have played like last year, this would have been an awesome game to watch, but not as good as last year, but I think that will be a good one. That's 6 p.m. on ESPN2. Other good matchups, you got the Frisco Bowl. It's San Diego State versus UTSA. Gasparilla Bowl, as we mentioned, Florida versus UCF. The Camila Bowl, Ball State and Georgia State. The Military Bowl, East Carolina versus Boston College. That one's probably going to be a sleeper. I would check that one out. The Birmingham Bowl, Houston versus Auburn. Yeah, if you're going to the Birmingham Bowl, they usually do free tickets for veterans. That's another good spot for a game to go watch if you're close enough to hit striking distance on that one. The first ever Fenway Bowl is Virginia versus Southern Methodist University. You got the Fiesta Bowl, which is Notre Dame and Oklahoma State. That should be a good game. And I'll just move on to the favorite thing of the week since it's mine. And as we're getting ready to close out this college football roundtable, it's going to be able to link up with the As for Football crew face-to-face and tailgate before the Army-Navy game. I really appreciate you guys bringing me on board this year. I think we've done some good stuff, and I think we're going to continue to do good stuff. I'm looking forward to the game. I'm going to gorge myself on various different delights before the game starts, and hopefully it will turn out to be a joyous occasion about 3 hours after 3 p.m. on Saturday.
Well, let me just say, I thank God Almighty that Army did not draw the Fenway Bowl against either Virginia or SMU, because Sally totally wanted to go to that thing. We were going to freeze our asses off. So I'll take the Armed Forces all day, every day.
All right. And without further ado, this has been Ring Knocker Radio. This is the biggest week of the college football season. If you don't believe it, then again, you're not an Army football fan. We are going to beat the hell out of Navy. Hey, stay tuned, and we'll see you guys next time.
Beat them.
Thanks for listening to the Ask for Football College Football Roundtable. Join the Ask for Football team on our next episode as we bring you more hot takes and college football analysis. We would also like to thank our sponsor, UniformFlag.com, where 100% of the proceeds from all purchases go to the Lead the Way Fund. Show your service and support a great cause. You can also find us at AskForFootball.com and across all social media platforms. I would also like to give a quick shout out to our Globe Platform presenters of our video podcast at VeteranTrashTalk.com.